Hey, welcome everyone to the 6th round post-fight show with me, Zane Simon. I'm going solo today. Just everybody else is out doing other stuff. Early morning card, got our times all mixed up, so just have to listen to me. I'm going to run back down through the results of this UFC Fight Night card in Poland. Donald Cerrone versus Darren Till. Main event just ended. Darren Till with the shocking KO upset over Donald Cerrone, and I'm sure there are a bunch of people out there who picked Darren Till. I was not one of them, and they get the value of not being shocked at all and telling everybody I told them so and all that. But honestly, this is, there aren't all, even if I pick a lot of fights incorrectly, there aren't that many results that I tend to be truly surprised by. I threw a pick towards Artem Lobov on this card. I thought he'd win. Him losing, Andre Fili winning, not a shock. I thought Devin Clark would beat Jan Blachowicz. Jan Blachowicz winning, the sub that Jan Blachowicz won with, catching him in the sleeper hold, the standing bulldog choke, all that. That was a shock, but Jan Blachowicz beating Devin Clark, not a shock. I was legitimately surprised at Darren Till beating Donald Cerrone. And that's not because I think that Donald Cerrone is some unbeatable force or amazing, I think he's an elite fighter. I think he's a very good fighter, a very good action fighter at the top of the division. But Till's game just did not seem like the right game to beat Donald Cerrone. And I know a lot of people out there just say, well, anybody who has boxing and who can come in and throw technically at Cerrone can beat him. And at least prior to this fight, I would have argued that that was not the case, and that really what has tended to be the biggest problems for Donald Cerrone are people who fight at a high pace and who can put a high pace on him early, people who can break him down to the body, like Masvidal did before to open up punches upstairs, and people who have that right mix of aggression and high output and body attacks to follow up with boxing. And Till's not a guy that I would have picked for that. He tends to, even as a pressure fighter and a guy who pressures really aggressively, he doesn't tend to throw at a really high output. Credit to him, he upped his output here, but he also didn't go to the body at all. It was a lot of the same Darren Till that we've seen in his entire career, which is a lot of mixed left hands and really relying on a power left head hunting to get the job done. And I didn't think that would be enough to beat Cerrone. But maybe one of the things to take away from this, some people will say, oh, well, that's a sign Cerrone's getting washed up or something like that. And Cerrone's certainly been fighting long enough that his career fall off could be starting at any time. I mean, he's 11 years and 54 fights, 53 fights. No, wait, I'm miscounting. 11 years and 43 fights, there we go, into his career. So there's certainly plenty of room for him to hit a cliff and start declining. But I think it also should be noted that one of the reasons that Cerrone struggles against pressure fighters is not necessarily output or body work, but it may be also his footwork in going backwards. Like Till was able to trap Cerrone up against the cage and really just keep him there in this fight, to the point that Cerrone's only answer was to try and take Till down. And when he couldn't get it, when he couldn't hold him down, even when he got takedowns, it just seemed like he resigned himself to being trapped on the fence and just trying to circle along the cage. And I think part of that's a credit to Till's great size and power and his length, that he's able to keep people, and his good pressure footwork, that he's able to keep people on the fence. He's able to make it so that they have to circle a specific direction. He forces people to go away from his left hand over and over, forces them into predictable patterns. But it's also yet another reason that Donald Cerrone can struggle with pressure fighters and with people who really come after him and attack him from the outset. So the big interesting fallout from this, of course, is that Cerrone had been penciled in to fight at UFC 219 in later this year. at the end of the year, and he's got time to recover. It's still only October, but that can't be like, coming off a TKO loss now, you got to wonder if that's going to be something that the UFC continues to look for, if they just push him right back into an end of the year card fight. It may have been at least sort of based on Cerrone coming out of this Till fight without taking too much damage, win or lose, and that was not the fallout of this. So something to watch out for in the coming couple weeks, whether UFC keeps their idea of penciling in Cerrone for the end of the year or not. Cerrone is obviously the kind of guy who wants to bounce back and fight all the time, so there's just as good a chance that he'll be right back on that card. Co-main event. Otherwise, should also note for Darren Till, as somebody who watched him just get a shocking win, what felt to me like a shocking upset win, this is, a huge move for him to jump. As they were talking about in the broadcast, this kind of puts him a year ahead of pace if he just had to slowly work his way through the UFC welterweight division, which is damned unforgiving. Going from Bojan Blachowicz to and Jason Ayari to Donald Cerrone fast tracks Till to a point that he's probably looking at getting only top 15 kind of fights now. Top, action main card, if not headliners for small shows, maybe co-mains or other top level action fights. Really fast tracks him in a way that the welterweight division could really use right now. There's a lot of guys clinging to spots at the top of that division that haven't put on great performances lately, or that have, that are very old guard. And we're only now finally starting to see, with guys like Perry and Till and Ponzinibbio, some new blood getting to the welterweight division after what feels like 3 or 4, maybe 5 years of kind of the same people coming out and being top flight welterweight. So exciting for me to see Till win. Definitely what I was looking for, and a really exciting win. Something that has me, I'm feeling very energetic from it just right now, even. In the co-main event, women's strawweight bout, Karolina Kowalkiewicz just did 3 rounds of work on Jodie Esquibel, outlanded her 2-1 all fight. They were kind of talking about like, oh, this really proves that Kowalkiewicz is the absolute, top 3 of the division and is right there for another title shot. And I'm not saying that Kowalkiewicz isn't clearly a top 5 strawweight. She absolutely is. But it's hard for me to see this fight as really proving anything for her. Just, this was such a bad matchup for Esquibel coming in, who Esquibel tends to be a volume fighter who doesn't have that much volume. She's not an overwhelming volume fighter. There's a reason that she has 3 split decisions on her record, and she can be outworked. Or 3 split decision. Yeah, she can be outworked. She's in a lot of close fights. She doesn't tend to be somebody who really overwhelms people. And again, somebody like Kowalkiewicz, who really puts on a extremely high pace. This was always going to be a terrible fight for Esquibel. So happy Kowalkiewicz got the win. I think it will. She called out Jessica Andrade afterward. I'd love to see that fight. It would be an awesome bout to square one of them away for another title shot at that point. But this doesn't necessarily prove anything to me for Kowalkiewicz, other than that she's still one of the few really elite fighters in that division. Light heavyweight bout before that, Jan Blachowicz versus Devin Clark, and really cool submission win for Blachowicz. He got the sleeper hold on him, classic pro wrestling style. Talked about when I was doing the live tweet updates for this, it looked like Devin Clark. He choked Devin Clark like Clark got out of hand at a keg party. It was awesome submission, great finish, really fun. And I don't know if it kind of unfortunately to me reasserts Blachowicz as a top 15 light heavyweight, which his performances in the UFC have not merited that to date. And beating Devin Clark and Igor Pokrayets and, uh, you know, his win over Latifi is like the one thing that keeps him clinging to that top 15 spot. And this win will keep him right in there, but it doesn't. I don't know. I mean, I gave Clark the first round of this fight, and Blachowicz did well to keep composed. He didn't gas out early, which I was kind of shocked by because he almost always gasses out early. But it's also not a fight it's not a win to inspire me with tons of confidence that Jan Blachowicz is still about to make a great UFC run. It was just a cool win, and unfortunately a setback for Clark, who continues to look like a good athlete who doesn't have a lot of technical tools built into his game. Somebody who's just trying to be powerful and, throw out big power strikes, look for big power takedowns, and overwhelm people with his aggression and athleticism, and doesn't necessarily have any real technical depth in there. So Blachowicz took advantage of that. Clark tried to rush in and just bull rush without any real plan as to what he was going to do afterward, and gave up his neck in a really funky position. So definitely other than Till's knockout or TKO win at the top of the card, Blachowicz's submission was the major highlight of the card. Oscar Piechota before that, middleweight bout to open up the main card, got a clinical win over Jonathan Wilson, stayed safe most of the fight. Wilson, is a big, powerful, athletic guy, but not somebody like Clark, not somebody who has a lot of technical depth to his game, and didn't really seem like he was willing to commit against Piechota, which, given that Piechota dropped him hard once and jumped on his back and almost got a rear naked choke once, and got, some very violent moments in the fight, I'm not really surprised Wilson wasn't willing to commit, but this fight was a lot of Piechota looking for big counter opportunities and Wilson being too timid to lead the fight, and so it just ended up being small moments of offense and large moments for Piechota, and large moments of nothing from either guy. So I'm hoping that Piechota gets more aggressive opponents down the line, can show a little bit more of his game, because it's an exciting game when he has somebody who is willing to commit to offense against him. But he's also, he's a really tricky grappler, and he's got power in his hands. So it may be that a lot of fighters aren't that willing to test him, and he could be up for some less than thrilling UFC fights as if he keeps asserting himself like that. For that, close out the prelims, Marcin Held got his first UFC win over Nasrat Haqparast, and I feel a little bit like Haqparast got robbed. I don't want to say he got really robbed, because when I was scoring it live, I scored it 29-28 Haqparast with the idea that Held could easily get a 29-28 himself, or even a 30-27. But I was still really surprised to see 30-27s across the board for Marcin Held. He obviously had large amounts of control in every round, but he also looked like he got hurt badly in every round. And more by the end of the third round, he just looked really gassed out and on wobbly legs because he was gassed out. But he got hurt badly in the second round. Haqparast landed the better shots in the first, I thought. And so I had Haqparast taking the first two rounds on damage and losing the third one on control. But they gave all three rounds to Held, and it's not great, but it's good. It's probably, if you're a fan of Marcin Held and Nasrat Haqparast, it's kind of the best outcome, because Haqparast may have gotten robbed, but he's clearly a powerful prospect with a lot more developing to do and a lot to show. And Marcin Held got a gift win to keep him in the UFC and get him more fights, because it's not like these weren't, his UFC fights haven't all been fun and exciting. They just haven't gone that well for him. So not an inspiring performance from Held, but a win, and Haqparast gets a reasonable UFC introduction as a prospect who can make some things happen down the road in the future with some good power and strong left hand and a lot of consistent controlled aggression that I liked. For that bantamweight bout, probably the best full action fight on the card, back and forth, just point for point action fight on the card. Brian Kelleher versus Damian Stasiak. Stasiak had some tricky angles that he was working early, stepping out, staying light on his feet, keeping away from Kelleher, making Kelleher chase him. Kelleher ran into a lot of hard shots in this fight, especially a lot of hard spinning back kicks that looked like they hurt him to the body, but just a lot of hard strikes in general. But he was also the faster, more powerful guy. And big problem for Stasiak, all fight ended up being his low single legs, or single legs, rather. I shouldn't even say low because he actually goes for a pretty high single leg. But Stasiak spent, in every round, he would reach down for one of Kelleher's legs and just reach over, like from the waist, just try to grab a leg. And when he did that, he opened his head up, exposed himself really badly to shots and to quick knees and to hard punches. And Kelleher broke his nose, maybe on a winging hook early, but then just kind of pulped him with hard knees as Stasiak would bend over for those single legs all fight. And by the end of the fight, it was really that, and the pace that Kelleher was pushing were both really wearing on Stasiak. Stasiak turned his back to try and retreat. Kelleher caught him with a hook, dropped him, finished him. Fun action fight, lots of traded strikes, no down moments, whole time, just balls out, fun fight, and good win for Kelleher. But also a little bit of I think it offers a lot of question marks in his ability to create a more nuanced game than just bullying forward aggressively. Because even Stasiak, who's not a great athlete and not a dangerous striker, was able to land a lot of shots all fight as Kelleher just kept trying to chase him down to land offense. So questions for Kelleher going forward. Stasiak just kind of, unfortunately another setback loss for him. I assume he's probably not going to get cut or anything, but he just kind of remains a funky action fighter for European cards for the UFC down the road. For that, easily the worst fight on the card, and what looked very much like the worst fight on the card going in. Ramazan Emeev, Sam Alvey, just a miserable fucking fight. Alvey came in overweight. He took the fight on short notice. Big credit to him. Couldn't cut. He had like 30 to 40 pounds to cut. Could not cut. Missed weight by 3 pounds. And he just, other than looking out of shape, he's always been a really slow-paced fighter, and it was a notch below his normal slow-paced, inactive style, but there was a lot of commentary and people being like, oh man, what's up with Sam Alvey? He just looks like he doesn't have it this fight. And it's kind of, it's like, well, this is how Sam Alvey always fights. People just forget that because he seems like a really nice dude and he smiles a lot, and when he doesn't have the slowest fight in the world, it's usually because he knocks somebody out with an exciting counter at some point in the bout. But when he's not landing that exciting counter knockout, they're all slow grinds. So Emeev, unfortunately, this is also kind of a bit of a telling fight for him and his style. He's a good, solid veteran coming off of the Russian circuit, capable, punches hard, but he's not the best takedown artist, and he ends up being a kind of a grinding clinch fighter. And at only 5'10", that may end up with some really slow bouts, as he's kind of an undersized middleweight working a very control-based style in the UFC. So be interesting to see how he does going forward with that. Just an ugly fight overall. I should probably stop talking about it because it sucked. For that featherweight bout, Andre Fili, Artem Lobov, fun fight. Impressive performance to me by Fili, mostly in that he used his full arsenal and stayed light on his feet, stayed creative. I was worried that the pace of Lobov and the countering would wear on Fili and would just give Lobov rounds, as Fili has had a habit of doing a lot of moving and a lot of feinting and less throwing. And he, but this time he worked behind a jab well that Lobov didn't have an answer for early. And then as Lobov found answers to the jab and started to open up and started to hit Fili harder as the fight went on, and found some good body shots on Fili and started to work some combinations and find his counter uppercuts more, Fili just changed things up and went to a wrestling heavy game and wrestled him through the canvas. And Conor McGregor apparently had some less than kind words for Fili's game plan afterward, calling him a bunch of gay slurs after the fight that the UFC had to then cut out of all their post-fight or their social media video that they tried to take of McGregor with Fili post-fight. But a really good performance from Fili where he needed a win, where he needed to be able to show that he's not just going to get sucked into a points kickboxing battle where his kickboxing is okay but not great and he can win or lose, but that he can also do other things, change up the pace of the fight, keep control, keep his opponent from gaining momentum. He did that really well against Lobov. And the big question will probably be what's next for Lobov. Straight losses to Swanson and Fili aren't anything terrible. They're both good fighters, but he kind of tweeted out after the fight that he's looking at other things to do in his career. He said he didn't want to be always retiring and unretiring and retiring and unretiring, which I don't know that I'd ever really paid attention to him retiring before, but it's kind of sounding like he's thinking about moving on to other stuff or maybe going to take a lot of time off. If he's just taking time off, I expect he'll be back. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy who's going to walk away from a fighting career easily. But I also expect the UFC will have him back because he, his association with Conor McGregor means he tends to draw a lot of eyes. Fili, it's just a good win to keep him on the horse, keep him in the division as an action fighter. Maybe he'll be able to put together a run to really make a charge at the top 15 at some point. He's certainly hanging around right at the top 20, 25 in featherweight, but has yet to really find any kind of real momentum, but solid performance for him. Welterweight bout before that, Warlley Alves defeated Salim Touari. Not a good fight, really. Good if you're looking for signs that Alves has finally learned his lessons to slow down and fight a slower paced fight and just pick his spots and be powerful and exciting in small bursts rather than just blowing all of his energy in round one and then fighting the rest of the fight gassed out in desperation. Good signs for that, but also against a fighter who didn't have a ton of takedown defense or and was really just there to have a power kickboxing fight with Alves. Alves just kind of acquiesced to that fight, so not a great look for that. I was surprised judges gave Touari a round. I thought Alves won all 3 rounds, maybe not decisively, but consistently landing the better shots. But it was a little worrisome to see Alves not being able to keep Touari down and keep control. He slid off Touari's back a couple times early and then just went away from his wrestling game altogether until late in the fight when he went for another takedown and got it without a lot of trouble. So I would have liked to see him exert a little more control in that way. If he's really going to show a game that's more patient, I'd like to see it also be more controlling. But it was a reasonable, fine, kind of boring kickboxing match. Women's bantamweight bout before that, Aspen Ladd, Lena Landsberg. Ladd came out looking to push the clinch a lot early, which was a big mistake against Landsberg. Landsberg just ate her up with knees inside in round 1. Round 2, though, Ladd tried to stay outside a little more, and then when she got in the clinch, when she got inside, she took Landsberg down And once she's on top, Ladd still got a crushing top game, throws a lot of hard ground and pound and volume. I thought the stoppage was early. Landsberg didn't look like she was anywhere close to being knocked out, even if she was in a bad position and eating shots. She was moving. She had her hands covering. But, TKO via Ki, Ladd out there just screaming her way into those punches and really selling them for the ref, and Landsberg not able to escape quick enough. So good win for Ladd. Reasonable showing for her, although I think it also showed a kind of a big lack of game planning and adjustment early to come after Landsberg in the clinch. But she did well to shoot for a takedown in the second round and finish the fight. Featherweight bout to open up the card, Josh Emmett versus Felipe Arantes, and this was a fun fight too. Emmett dropped Arantes 4 times in the first round. Emmett, it's weird because Emmett is a good power. He has good power in his hands. He's a puncher who obviously throws hard. You don't knock a guy down and make him like flare flop 4 times in the first round, no matter how much good and hard you're pushing this. Oh, is Arantes like just faking it and dropping to the mat to pull guard? It's like, you do not fall flat on your face in an attempt to pull guard. Nobody pulls guard that way. Come on, guys. But Emmett, despite having really solid power in his hands, he's just a poor finisher. His shot selection when he has people hurt is not great. He doesn't have, I think, the accuracy maybe to really catch guys after he hurts them. So it's just kind of a weird, consistent thing, for a guy who hits as hard as he does. He has 3 TKOs in his career, and he hasn't had any finishes in the UFC. But he hurt Arantes bad early, and then just kind of stayed ahead of Arantes the rest of the fight. Second round was close. I thought Arantes maybe landed the better shots, might have stolen the round. But then Emmett came back in the third, landing the better shots again. Arantes his game is too limited to him getting an opponent to an opponent giving him a ton of respect. If people go after Felipe Arantes, his takedown defense isn't great. He's not a great fighter off his back foot. He did look better fighting off his back foot in this fight after getting drilled multiple times, but his entire game plan seemed to be die by right hands, and that's not a good way to fight. Otherwise, Arantes, he's really dependent on if he's on his back, he's going to try and throw up a Hail Mary submission there, which they've worked in the past, but not against anybody, or not against really great competition. Yves Jabouin is a good fighter, but still, it's not a great go-to technical setup for Arantes. And otherwise, going forward, he really needs a lot of space to get creative and to use his kicking game to build a fight well. And if anybody pressures him, stays after him the way Emmett did, he's limited to just kind of picking single strikes and never getting in a rhythm, and has trouble fighting his way into rounds. And that really cost him here. I don't know how much he's going to fix that. I'm glad he's back at 145. I think the cut to 135 wasn't necessarily very helpful for him, but I don't know, a fight against a guy like Emmett is always going to be a lot of trouble for him. So strong performance from Emmett. Look forward to seeing what he can do at 145. I'm hoping that the excitement of knocking somebody down 4 times in the first round is a big reason that he slowed down in the fight. Just kind of a big adrenaline dump. Otherwise, there are some questions about his cut, that he looked a little faded as the fight went on, and in ways that he hasn't typically looked that faded in his other bouts. But something to watch for in the future. Otherwise, yeah, back to the top. Hard just not to be, for what was kind of certainly kind of a mediocre prelim card up to the Pichota fight. It was hard not to enjoy the last 3 fights. Kowalkiewicz putting on a clinic, Blachowicz with his funky sub, and then Till really thrilling with that TKO win over Donald Cerrone that pushes him right to the top 15 and straight into bigger things. And, you know, fortunately too with Till, he's got a mouth on him and he's going to sell every fight and he's going to get people excited and get people interested. He challenged Mike Perry right after the fight. Perry's got a fight book, but Perry was there, you know, doing the UFC PR tour thing, and Perry got up on the side of the ring and started jawing at him, and they're building some fun heat there. I don't know what might be next for Till. Top of the welterweight division is pretty booked right now, but that does mean that there will be a lot of fighters coming off of wins in the near future that could be matched up. Mike Perry, if he beats Santiago Ponzinibbio, Santiago Ponzinibbio, if he beats Mike Perry. There are fun options for Darren Till coming next, and I'm looking forward to seeing him fight again. On that note, I'm going to wrap things up. Not a very long sixth round post-fight show, but going solo, so I can't just sit here and keep talking to myself. You can find me on Twitter at @TheZaneSimon. And over on Bloody Elbow, writing, doing videos, all that stuff I do week in, week out. If you're watching this on YouTube, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel, MMANation.com, DOTCOM. Both those things help us a ton. We will be back next week for UFC Sao Paulo, Brunson versus Machida, with all our normal run of shows. So Vivisection, Knuckle Up, Care Don't Care, Heavy Hands, If I Did It, all that stuff we do every week. So tune in for that, and we will see you soon.